Off of the back of my solo videos, one of the most common questions I'm asked in Warzone is how do you play aggressively? How is it that somebody like myself who plays frequently is able to take on entire teams, move around the map with confidence and aggression, and try and get as many kills as possible? Well, today I'm bringing you a 33 kill gameplay, and this was a gameplay where I deliberately decided to lock in and play aggressively to illustrate some of the things that make aggressive gameplay successful and things that you shouldn't do. Because the reality is, aggressive gameplay isn't just full sending into teams and hoping for the best. There is somewhat of an art form to it in terms of how you create opportunities for yourself, and today I wanted to talk about all of that in this game, in the hope that it can boost your own aggressive gameplay. Whether that's solos, duos, trios, or quads. In this video, I am soloing in quads. I have 3 other friends running around doing their own thing, but for the most part, it's just me by myself. This first play I want to show you is an attempt on an entire team across different rooftops. And in Warzone Competitive, we regularly refer to these as isolation plays. Now, the reason for an isolation play is that you're planning on picking off a squad or breaking them down by isolating the furthest factor away. Now in this case, I land on one person who I assumed was by himself. I didn't see the second, but they were spread so far across the roof that I got an easy down on one, an easy down on the second, and then it was simply a 1v2. And with 2 players down, this team is panicking, they're wondering where it came from, and it creates confusion and chaos. But isolation plays are a fantastic way of creating opportunity by focusing on one player in a successful position that you know is going to benefit you. Now, the reason I challenge this rooftop is clear. A, I've got an obvious target. B, I've got easy escape ways to get out of this roof if I need to. And C, I think with this pick on this player here, I can play aggressively across the other rooftops with the team weakened. This second play is something that I think is quite important, and it's learning how to switch gears in Warzone. You can be as aggressive as you like, and in this instance I was chasing after somebody who I'd seen and had audibles on in the building. But when you've lost the advantage, it's important to know when to slow down and re-engage in a different way. Now, I managed to slowly move across and take this first player out on the building. And obviously I'm in quads, so I'm assuming there's going to be 2, possibly 3 more players who come and push me. So I deliberately switch gears. I play very slow, I play very passive, and I slow down this entire sequence of gameplay, primarily listening for sound cues in order to get me the second kill. Now thankfully this wasn't an entire team, but if it was, they would once again be in a 2-man down situation where panic starts setting in, the team's worried about losing the game, and they start breaking away or moving off in confusion. But switching gears is a really important thing in Warzone, whether it's final circles where you need to slow down and play a little less aggressively and a little bit more intelligently, positionally, or even in an aggressive sequence, just learning when you've lost the advantage, you don't have a clear line of sight, you don't have a player cracked with plates, you don't have a player down, and knowing that the advantages are suddenly dispersed, that is a huge thing in aggressive gameplay. You'll see it time and time again, whether it's backing off and plating, slowing down and playing sound cues. The most successful aggressive players are ones who know when to switch up the tempo when they know they haven't got the initiative. This next sequence of gameplay in the background is one of my key points in terms of aggressive gameplay, and it's always assuming that you are compromised. Now, I'm in quads, so I'm always assuming that 4 players are going to be pushing me on any given occasion, but it's worth remembering whether you're playing solos, duos, trios, or quads, action and gunfights attract more action and gunfights, because players who are playing passively hear a window of opportunity. When you hear a team fighting, you're thinking, oh, third party, easy kills, easy way to pick up some wins and some rewards. And for the most part, those players are correct. So when you get into these gunfights when you're playing aggressively, you always have to assume that the next thing is going to come. Every time you fight somebody, there's going to be another one. When you wipe one team, a second team will show up. If you wipe half of the team, they might decide to get back from the gulag and come straight back into the action. You always have to play under the absolute assumption that every gunfight you take is going to lead to another gunfight. And this sequence around this redeploy balloon and buy station is a perfect example of that. Because not only is this a key position on the map for rotations and buying teammates back, but it's also an area where I had tons upon tons of players from different teams constantly engaging me, and I managed to break away from those engagements, re-engage, but I was always looking for the second or third player, and I was always looking for the second squad or the third squad to rock up on me. because once you deal with one, more are going to come. And I think this piece of information is not only important for teams who are playing aggressively individually or as a squad, but really important for solo players. Solos is a game mode where people are looking for third parties all the time because they don't have the confidence to play aggressively in scenarios by themselves. So every single time you get a kill in solos, I would suggest smoking yourself off, getting the loot you need, and instantly running away or instantly looking for cover. Don't end up in a DayZ scenario where somebody's just watching the person you've killed and gets an easy kill on you because you're fumbling around with loot or you're fumbling around with trying to get something off the floor. This is a really important thing, and I think if you just watch this sequence of gameplay, you can see how often I was regularly smoking myself, looking around, using high alert, but I was always under the assumption that more was coming. I was reloading, using utilities, and doing everything in my power to give myself advantages in this situation. This leads me nicely on to my next segment, which is utility being king. Utility in this game is without a doubt the only way you can play aggressively. Because what utility does in Warzone is it creates windows of opportunity. Did you get your plates cracked by somebody? Cool. Smoke grenade down, chance to put some plates in, chance to re-engage. Are you in a bad position? Cool. Smoke grenades down, chance to move to a different location and try and approach it again from a different angle. Are you pushing a team? Sweet. Grenade over top, see if you can get a plate break or see if you can get it down. You are looking at creating opportunities for yourself with every piece of utility. I actively recommend either the thermobaric grenade or the regular grenade for their sheer damage output and the thermobaric grenade's ability to set people on fire and cause all sorts of chaos and confusion. But the smoke grenades are my go-to for an absolute must. Obscuring sightlines against teams that you're pushing against, giving yourself opportunities to get out of bad situations, or just generally creating a window for you to be safe in is absolutely huge. If any of you play Valorant or CSGO, you'll know that smoke grenades are really big for bomb defusals, really big for taking on opponents in terms of cutting sightlines, and things are no different in Warzone. Smoking yourself off is a fantastic way to just give yourself a breather in an otherwise very hectic situation, and I cannot recommend it more than anything else. I would also recommend having alternative utility in your inventory. Cycling between a stun grenade and a smoke grenade gives you two very different types of opportunities under one tactical or lethal setup. Utilities allow you to control a situation, whether you want to disengage or re-engage or try something from a different approach, and that really nicely leads me on to one of my final points, which is knowing when to disengage. I am soloing in quads right now, and I am never going to complain about a team in quads working as a team to try and win a game. People who complain about stacking on the internet are trying to get some weird TikTok clips or something, and it's just very strange behavior. The reality is, teams are going to play as teams. They're going to play as a group or individually in ways that benefit them. And you can almost make the assumption that any team is going to play as compact as possible when they're being moved on by somebody else. So there are just loads of different times where you know for a fact that just not engaging with a squad is worthwhile. If you see 3 guys sitting in the stairwell on a building, unless you've got grenades to try and get some entries, you're not going to get anything out of that situation. If you've got a team locking up a rooftop and all of them are looking around a lot, you're not going to get anything out of that situation. If there is a team working as a compact unit, unless you have clear and obvious ways to isolate part of that team or play a pick with a utility or a grenade or a sniper headshot, there is simply no way you can break those groups down. And knowing when to disengage from that scenario and rely on either teammates or just a new approach is far more beneficial as a player. The end of this gameplay sequence where we win the game and I lock in the 33 is a really good example of that, because teams at the end of circles naturally play more compact, and I relied heavily on grenades to make a 1v3 and 1v4 a viable option for me, and relied upon a teammate at the very end to pick up the win for me. And that's just a good example of knowing when to slow down a little bit, knowing when the advantages are out of your favor, and knowing that stacks in this game are an inevitability. And if you're a solo player, you should also keep in mind that although stacking isn't a thing in solos, positional superiority is a thing in solos. So when you're playing aggressively in solos, you always have to work with the assumption that no, people aren't stacking together, but yes, they are playing in positions that make sense. tops of rooftops, buildings that are defendable, places where they can hide in corners. And that's the same kind of approach in terms of disengaging stacks. Sometimes you have to know in a solos game when somebody just has a better position, and it's not worth your while. Hopefully you found this video useful. And I do want to caveat this entire video by saying that aggressive gameplay is very difficult to do, and honestly, it can be very dependent on the kind of lobby that you end up getting in Warzone. There are times where if I attempted half the stuff I did in this video in slightly more challenging lobbies, I would have got spat on 3 or 4 times over. And that's just the reality of Warzone. There's no denying that having an easier or more challenging lobby can determine how you have to play sometimes. And that's very evidently clear as somebody who's played at the World Series of Warzone, where at the top flight of gameplay, everybody plays compact. Everybody plays less aggressively than usual and plays a bit more coordinated, because they know that it's finer margins that decide gunfights. So that's definitely not something I'm shying away from in this video, and I will say that this lobby wasn't necessarily easy, but it wasn't the most challenging I've ever been in, and I found it quite easy to disengage and break down some of these teams, and whilst that's easy for me, it might not have been easy for somebody else in the lobby. If you found this video useful, drop a like, drop a sub, and I'll catch you in the next one.